the GeoSTQB Talks podcast. Today we have a special guest here. You might recognize him. It's Filip Hric. He is an ambassador for the Cypress, and basically anything related to Cypress, he knows, he shares and teaches everywhere, absolutely, on his Discord channel, on his website, etc. And even in person, when you see him, you can ask some Cypress things, it turns out. So,
Exactly.
Hello Filip.
Hey.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoy being here.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't expect that I would see you this year, because if you didn't know, usually Filip, for the past 4 years, he's been part of the our Georgian conference, so Testers Day, we call it. On every day, every year, 9th of September, we celebrate Testers Day, we have a big conference, and also the reason why today's area where we record actually this podcast is a bit different than it is usually, and that's because right now in the background, the event is going on, people are listening to the topics, discussing stuff, talking, eating soon, I guess, because it's a lunch break soon, and we're going to try to wrap it up before that because we're hungry, we've been here for a while. So, Filip, first question, I guess. What's your impressions? I don't know, how was your flight? How do you like the Georgia? How do you like our event?
I totally fell in love with your country. Honestly, yesterday we had a tour of the historical old town, of the former capital town. We went through the history, we went through all kinds of interesting trivia about Georgia, about Tbilisi, and in the evening I got to experience Georgian football culture, which was a lot of fun. We watched the game on the big screen. Georgia won, surprisingly, 4-1. It was an amazing result. I got chills just talking about it, and I got a jersey now. Which I got to show off on stage. So yeah, I'm enjoying it very much. It is my first time here. It's definitely not my last time here.
It's great to hear that, and yeah, I'm pretty sure almost no one expected the result our football team provided us, 4-1 against a pretty tough opponent.
Exactly.
And we were literally watching it while organizing for this event yesterday on a presentation. So yeah, that was great, and I remember you coming to us and you were so excited. I didn't even know you were watching that game, but you were like, oh my god, that was so awesome. And this jersey you wore, you had an idea for your presentation. Tell us about it. What did you do?
Yeah, so after the match ended, the whole city was embraced in celebrations. Everyone was honking. It was like the whole city had a party. It was amazing. It was first time in my life I ever seen something like that, and it's been great. It's not. It's like the competition that you're now playing. It wasn't the finals. It wasn't like the biggest event of the year. It was a match, of course, against international opponent. I think that's relevant. But the amount of celebrations that were there really translated over to me, and I got so excited. I told myself, well, I have to use this moment in my presentation. So I asked you if you can get me hooked up with a national football team T-shirt. And you guys were amazing. You pulled it off. So I have my T-shirt and I used it on my presentation. I revealed it at one moment, and we all chanted together "Sakartvelo,"
which is a pretty good pronunciation.
Oh, thank you. and yeah, it was a way for me to connect with the audience and to share this moment, to be part of this amazing moment for your country. So I enjoyed that very much.
Yeah, and regarding your presentation, it's one thing, we've been hearing your presentation for the past 3 years. This is the 4th year. Yep. We've been usually doing it online. This year we were finally able to get you here in person. And it's not for flattering or anything that I'm saying, but you're a really great person in person. It's a great pleasure to talk to you. You're a cool guy, let's say it like that, and knowledgeable at that for at your profession and and everything what you do. And we did have some hiccups, technical hiccups, like your laptop lost its battery, then we kind of replaced your laptop, and our laptop then lost its battery. So but at the end you were able to present a great presentation, which we really liked, and thank you for that. And it would not be a Filip Hric podcast or you talking or anything if I didn't ask anything about Cypress. So brace yourself.
All right.
No hard questions, nothing. Let's just start from the ground. I want to discuss that. Obviously, you talk about Cypress, you advocate for that pretty fairly, I would say. When it's something not working for Cypress, you show it, but you also provide enough participation with Cypress that, okay, if it didn't work before, now it supports that. But I really want to ask you from the very beginning, why Cypress? Why did you decide to start advocating for it, using it, and going for such lengths like coming to this conference to showcase it and stuff like this? Why Cypress?
The very short and unentertaining answer is I was just lucky, and I pretty much just started with Cypress. So my test automation journey started almost a decade ago when I finished my psychology studies. I did 2 years of counseling, and then I switched over to tech. After I switched, I started doing testing, and I switched over to test automation. And Cypress was like just in town. They had a presentation in Bratislava as a new testing tool, and my colleagues showed that to me. And look, Cypress, kind of interesting. And I was like, okay, let me see if I can try it. So I did try it, and it was really, really exciting. And then the second part, which probably made me like sort of an advocate for Cypress, was that I decided to share my learning journey. So this is one of the things I would maybe advise to the folks out there. Even if you are a junior, you feel like you don't know a lot, it's really great thing if you can share your learnings. And there's this idea, learning in public. So you learn something and you write a blog post about it. A very short one. You don't have to do a whole, 10-minute long read kind of thing. Just share something that you learned today, because something that you learned today was something you didn't know yesterday, and maybe there's someone in the learning journey that needs exactly that, so you can help them. And I think this idea is really powerful, and I really like that idea. So that's how I started sharing my Cypress tips, where I was like, hey, this is what I learned, and here you go. And then slowly and gradually people started noticing that, started reading my blogs, started inviting me to conferences, and I guess here I am today. Right now Cypress is kind of the growth of Cypress has sort of flatlined. It doesn't grow as fast as it did anymore. Right now it seems that Playwright is the new kid on the block that's getting popular, even more popular than Cypress. We'll see what's going to happen. I try to keep on sharing my learning journey, and right now I'm learning about all kinds of different tools as well. So you probably hear me advocating or writing blogs and video content around Playwright, WebDriver, I/O, maybe some other tools if they come.
Yeah, and from my personal experience as well, like using Cypress is a good experience. It's quite handful for the tasks that you have at hand for automation. Yeah. And it's also really easy to debug if you wrote everything right at that. And you also talk about it, like how do you write tests correctly? And today's speech was actually how do you write flaky tests. Yeah. That was the title at least, but ideally is how to avoid this flakiness that you have in test automation. And that's what I said, it's a really good presentation, given that it's a really common problem. Even on my current project, I have it. And we're trying to reduce that at least, because not always you can get rid of it completely.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Because there's this question that's being asked a lot, like which tool should I use, right? And there's this comparison table, and there's like browser support and speed of execution and stuff like that. At the end of the day, it's not that important, because what happens in your day-to-day life, right? You write a test and it takes you an hour, right? And then you write 100 tests, so it takes you 100 hours. But what happens with those tests, you also need to maintain them, enhance them, update them, and that's going to take much more than 100 hours. It's going to take a bigger part of your day. So what we need to be talking about is not only how to write tests, but also how to debug them and how to maintain them. It's a really important discussion to have, and it's a really important factor that will be like very important when you are choosing a tool. Having a good debugging experience is very crucial, because you're not only going to be writing those tests, you're going to be debugging them. And I think like there's many people that overlook that. So I'm pretty much just saying you shouldn't. Like, you should look at what the debugging experience is with the tool you want to choose for your test automation.
Yeah, and usually when they overlook that, they find it the hard way, that they probably should have paid more attention to debugging and writing your automation framework or whatever you're doing in the right way. And right way doesn't, in my experience at least, it doesn't mean that, okay, there is like a documentation somewhere on the internet, read that, follow all of the steps, and you're gonna be good. No, it's not like that. I'm pretty sure in no world, in no other jobs, not only QA, it doesn't work like that. What people usually don't understand, for example, for big projects, when they have like 5, 6, 7, 10 QA guys and like half or more of them write automation, usually what I encounter is that someone writes their tests in their own way, someone writes them in a different way. Someone doesn't forget to actually log important things, and someone just overflows everything with logs. Someone doesn't write logs at all. And I really wanted to ask you about maybe your experience. Have you encountered something similar to that? Maybe you had experience in fixing that or kind of preventing that mistakes that people usually make.
Yeah, I think you touched on a very, very important point here, right? Testing is not an individual activity, it's a team sport, right? And not only the testing team or the QA team is responsible, but also you need to call developers in. So the whole team is responsible. Actually, why stop at developers? Let's call designers, product managers. Let's make the delivery of software the whole team, whole company sport, right? Because quality is not something that only testers are responsible for, but what everyone is responsible for. Tying back to your question, right? It is a thing that happens. Everyone has different backgrounds, everyone has a different writing style, and I had a presentation last year about testing like a developer, developing like a tester. And as testers, we often come from like different fields. We don't really have computer science degrees or haven't studied IT. Myself being an example of that, I have a master's in psychology. So there are like many of the practices we kind of lack in our job. So one example would be like if we have a team of 10 testers that develop test automation, it would be really good to take one of the practice from developers and apply it. I'm talking about peer review, pull requests, right? So as testers, we should do that. We should review each other's work, and not because we want to set it the right way and say like, oh, you didn't add comments in your code, oh, you have to do that. But it's a great learning tool because we all look at the code, we all think about it, we make it a team sport, we decide on what are the standards for our work, and we decide that together equally, not from top down, but equally as a team. And I think that's one way of how to solve that problem, how to solve the fact that everyone is writing their tests in kind of a different way, because working as a team will eventually unify that. So that's kind of my opinion, or maybe one of the solutions of how that particular problem could be solved.
Yeah, two really good topics you touched. First was about talk to developers, learn from them, and maybe take something that they do and then reproduce it in your QA processes. The other one was actually the example itself, the PR reviews, which I actually had an experience in one of the projects. Like for a year and a half, I was working there. We did actually have PR reviews, and I can tell from my experience, it's a great thing to do.
Yeah.
Like someone wrote something, you need to approve it, and you go there, check their code, and we would like take turns, or it would just take it in random. Like there are like 7 people, someone made a PR, and it would like choose someone randomly. Like it would be me today, tomorrow it would be someone else, and that way we are able to check everyone else's code. We understand who writes and how, and also we had like some standards that we follow and try to use and follow them. Yeah, as I said.
If you think about it, it's sort of a manual QA for the code, right? Yeah. And that's great.
But what I found out, it's actually hard to do it correctly, because the issue with PRs is that if you do it incorrectly, it takes a lot of time to implement any kind of feature that you do, both in development and in your test automation. Because we do testing and someone might see it as a little bit different from the developer, but in my experience, it's kind of usually close to developing, because you're creating your own program that tests this other program, right? And the issue with approving these PRs actually, or reviewing them, because other than that, you have other tasks. Like if you use like Poker and you have like 8 points to complete at the end of your sprint, you're like, okay, I need to do that first. I don't have time to do PRs. And then it kind of takes a lot of time to implement your features. What's your opinion on that whole process?
I think like implementing this kind of process is going to take some time. It is going to take some getting used to. The thing is, like, when you are starting, it feels wrong. It feels like this is annoying. We shouldn't be doing this. It's taking too much time. I don't want to do that, right? It actually will not last, right? Because if you try to implement something new, you're not good at it, but you're going to improve, right? So one of the examples is sort of a parallel in that was that in one of the companies I worked with, we would have these checkpoints and requirements in order for the pull request to be approved. Now, sometimes it would happen that someone would create a pull request and would forget 1 or 2 of these checkpoints. But as they went through and as the time went on, they would stop forgetting those. And that's the process of learning, right? That happens to all of us. Like when we have troubles at the beginning of implementing good practices, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to improve gradually. So it's just another way of saying like, try to persevere, try to keep on doing that. And if something does not work long term, then change that, right? I like to say that best practice is just someone's opinion, So form your own opinions on how you should work in your own company. If it doesn't work, if you need some other workflow to be implemented, then do that. But keep your mind open, keep your eyes open, so you can figure the correct way that works for you and your team.
Yeah. And you mentioned one really important word, maybe in a different context, but important nonetheless, the word requirements.
Yep.
One of the most useful things for both QA and developers, and also one of the painful ones, because we usually don't get either any requirements, or if we get requirements, they're maybe incomplete, formatted badly, unreadable, and stuff like that. And that's GeoSTQB, for example. That's why they have some standards for how can you write good requirements. Let's start from bottom. What's your opinion? How important are requirements? And then let's switch to that other question of how often do you actually encounter requirements and good requirements on a project?
Yeah. So when I started, I worked at a startup. No one had any idea about requirements. We would just, as testers, we would just look at the feature and try to put ourselves in the shoes of the user and see if we are able to test it and use it properly, and if we are able to use it in the same way the real user would use it. So that's no requirements. That's just like values we have, empathy we want to show towards the user, right? What that also meant that everyone in the team felt a very deep sense of responsibility for what we ship. And I think that's a good thing, right? If you have requirements, and let's imagine you have a hierarchy, right? You have this test analyst who writes those requirements, or maybe product owner. Someone will write those requirements and then hand them over to someone who executes and makes sure that those requirements are met, right? If you are going to read those requirements sort of with this narrow-minded mindset, right, and just make sure that those requirements are met, and you don't think about anything else, I don't think that's a good thing, right? And of course, if the requirements are even bad or hard to read or hard to understand or whatever, that's even worse, right? But there's this layer around this, and that's the culture that's being built in the company, right? I think there's a bigger weight on responsibility for the person that writes those requirements versus someone who is executing those tests, right? And I think ideally it should be more balanced. We should all share that responsibility. We should all share the pain of user that's not being able to use the software properly. And what that's going to open is also like areas for improvement, right? So we're not only shipping the minimum thing that's required. We're actually thinking, you know what? We designed this in this way, but as we are testing it, realizing it makes no sense. This button should be over here. This feature should be hidden. We should make this more prominent. And that's quality. That's actually bringing quality to the user. So it's a long rant from me on requirements, but and you can probably sense that I'm not the biggest fan of this concept. But I am a big fan of having accountability, having that responsibility for what we ship to the user. And I honestly think like that's ultimately what our job is about testers, about quality assurers, right? We want to make sure that the thing we give to our users actually makes them happy.
Yeah, and you did say that you're not the biggest fan of requirements, and partially, honestly, I agree with the part when we have requirements, and in my opinion, and I'm pretty sure it's like an objective truth at this point, that you do have a requirement, but it doesn't mean that, okay, I followed every single requirement, I say this works, you can ship it. QA, in my opinion, is our experiences, our experiences basically, and our experience allows us to determine and say that, okay, this thing, it's probably not even gonna work. And even before you even implemented that feature, as a QA, you do have an experience and also an authority in a way that to say that, hey, okay, that won't work. And they either like accept it and say it's no, and then it's like in 2 weeks it really doesn't work and they have to change it anyways, but we lost 2 weeks now and stuff like that. I think it's a balanced thing. Like, requirements are pretty important to have because you really need to understand how the product has to work. Yeah. Because someone has like stakeholders, our end users, anyone can have their own requirements. They want it to work in a way, and as a QA, I really need and want to understand how it works. And like the really quick example that in our current company in the project, we actually encounter the fact the lack of requirements almost every day. And what we test the ClickHouse product, for example, they have a pretty good documentation, but they don't have requirements. And what we actually as QA do, we find really useful that we actually write requirements for the product itself by ourselves. And if you are proficient at it and you have experience with that, it literally takes like a minute and a half to write a single requirement, but now you understand how the feature works. Yeah. And then you can edit it, remove it and stuff like that. And in a year, when you get back to the project, you know how to continue and when to start from it. Yeah.
And I think that's a good idea, because I talked about responsibility, right? And having that responsibility split, is what I think is harmful, right? But you're talking about requirements that are written by people that are actually responsible for testing, and they do feel responsible for that. And I think that's great. So in essence, I think we might be using the word requirements in various different ways here. And the example you have given, I think it's a really good example of how things can work and can actually be effective.
Yeah. And maybe the last question, but one of the guys actually asked me to ask you that question and to provide a deep answer from you.
All right.
So the question was as follows. When we talk about Cypress, what are the examples when it's actually not really recommended, or it might be even bad, harmful, to use Cypress in big projects, for example, in this instance?
Yeah, so Cypress really shines when you have a complete control over the code you are actually testing. Cypress tests were designed to live in the same repository as the code, right? It was also built to be tested for modern web applications. It was supposed to be integrated into your CI. Right? And if that's your situation, then Cypress is probably a very good tool. It has great experience, etc. But as we all know, there are many different situations in test automation which are different. Sometimes you have a separate repository from the code you are testing. Sometimes you are a software house or doing testing on demand, right? So you have different clients that have different requirements, and you need to test a banking app, a sports betting app, a SaaS service, or something like that. You have all these different things. In those cases, Cypress might work, but you might fall into some traps. Cypress is a testing tool, not a web automation tool. So if you make that split, right, then a testing tool will only test things you are in control of. Test automation tool will automate anything, and there's like various options of what you can do with that. So Selenium has that on their title, right? It automates browser. What you do with that, it's up to you. And it's a different approach. So for example, I have friends that are testing Salesforce apps, right? You are in control of zero code over Salesforce, right? But there's still a demand for test automation. Using Cypress, good luck there. It's going to be hell. You're probably better off with something else. Selenium, Playwright, whatever. So there are actually many situations where Cypress is not the ideal tool. What I have been enjoying was the easy-to-use syntax, the fact that it is in JavaScript, the language of the web, right? But I would be lying, I would be dishonest if I would try to recommend it for everything. It's definitely not for everything, so don't try to use it for everything.
And that's one of the most important reasons why people actually like you, your honesty. You actually provide the objective truth, not just trying to sell something. And
I try.
And thank you for that. I guess the last question, and it's not a big question, you mentioned that other than Cypress, you're actually trying out many different tools, and you actually listed a couple of them. Mm-hmm. Maybe like the most recent one. Maybe you can provide an example, what you're using, what you're interested in right now, what you might recommend to the viewers, what can they use for test automation.
So right now I'm playing with Playwright and WebDriver.io. The philosophies of these tools is slightly different from Cypress, but I think they are really exciting. Playwright, many people already know, it's been backed by Microsoft. It's been getting more and more popular. The transition from Selenium to Playwright is like, people are super happy with that because it has a similar syntax in many ways. It's way faster. It's easy to integrate into CI. It has good cross-browser support. And I'm trying it out to learn about it, and I already shared some videos. I will be sharing more, so stay on the lookout for that. I also think WebDriver.io is interesting, especially right now with their version 9. They have implemented the WebDriver by die. So there were many people that were like pretty much like throwing Selenium away. It's not being used anymore. We're moving to these new fancy tools that are going to solve all our problems. Spoiler alert, they're not. If you have flaky tests in Cypress, they're going to be flaky in Playwright, in Selenium, in any kind of magical tool out there. But WebDriver by Die is this new protocol that's being implemented with WebDriver. It's coming to Selenium as well. I think you can actually already use it. I'm really not 100% sure. But it is this new idea, this new protocol that's going to make it much more effective to test modern web applications. So you can actually have this BiDi stands for bi-directional control, because like before the WebDriver protocol would pretty much like be sending HTTP requests as sort of commands to the browser to open this page, locate this element, click on this element, and stuff like that. Playwright was really interesting because it had this WebSocket connection, so it would create a connection and then send requests to those, so it was very fast, etc. And now this sort of very similar idea is coming to Selenium and WebDriver IO. So I think we are in for a very interesting battle of test frameworks, because for years the Cypresses and Playwrights of the world were winning, but now I think the things are going to get a little bit more leveled. So I'm really interested in exploring WebDriver IO. I think you should not sleep on that. It has been around for some time, but not many people were using it. I think it might be an interesting one to explore.
Yeah, and I guess we do have a good, healthy competition between different tools here, which is beneficial for us as users. If someone else is getting more popular, other tool is trying to get even more popular by implementing some functionality that we would find useful and interesting. Yeah. Thank you, Filip. Thank you for participating in that podcast. Thank you for coming to Georgia, and it was a pleasure getting to know you. I hope we'll see you in the future, maybe in the next year. I don't know. Let's see. You did say you would gladly come back to Georgia again, so we'll see next year, 9th of September. The date doesn't change, maybe even earlier. Thank you again. Thanks our viewers for watching the podcast. You can check it out on different various platforms that we have, being YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We'll think about adding some other platforms as well, but those are that we have for now. Thank you. Keep an eye on our socials and see you next time.
Thank you very much for having me. Bye, everyone.